Though the American colonies succeeded in gaining independence from the British yoke through a concerted action, their independence did not mean an end of all their difficulties. On the other hand, in the year following independence, the colonies were confronted with numerous economic, constitutional, and political problems. It took United States a number of years to resolve these problems. In this video, we will discuss different constitutional, economic, and political problems, so first move towards constitutional problem. 1. The Articles of Confederation. Drafted during the war, the Articles of Confederation were America's first attempt at national government. They created a league of friendship among the 13 states. Weak by design, for fear of tyranny. Congress could declare war, make treaties, and manage foreign affairs. But it could not levy taxes, regulate trade, or enforce laws. 2. Weak central authority. Without power to raise revenue, Congress depended on voluntary contributions from the states. Contributions that rarely came. Laws passed by Congress required the approval of 9 out of 13 states, making action slow and often impossible. Amendments to the Articles required unanimous consent, leaving the system nearly unchangeable. 3. Conflicts among states. States quarreled over borders, trade tariffs, and currency. Some issued their own money, while others refused to accept it. Rivalries grew so sharp that at times it seemed the Union itself might dissolve. 4. Calls for reform. By the mid-1780s, leaders like George Washington, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton recognized that the Articles were unworkable. The Philadelphia Convention of 1787 would produce a bold solution, the United States Constitution. But ratification was not easy. Federalists and Anti-Federalists clashed bitterly over the balance of power between states and the new central government. Thus, America's constitutional problems after independence were not solved overnight. They were the first great test of whether the Republic could survive. The war for independence left the United States financially exhausted. Victory carried a heavy price. 1. War debt. The Continental Congress had borrowed millions from France, the Netherlands, and domestic creditors. Soldiers often went unpaid, and many received only promissory notes instead of wages. The new government had no reliable way to raise the money needed to pay its debts. 2. Currency crisis. During the war, Congress printed Continental dollars. By 1781, they were nearly worthless. The phrase "not worth a Continental" became common slang. Inflation soared. Ordinary people lost faith in paper money. States issued their own currencies, creating chaos in trade. 3. Trade disruptions. Independence ended the protection of the British mercantile system. American merchants lost privileged access to British markets in the Caribbean and Europe. British imports flooded into the United States, while American exports struggled to find buyers. 4. Agricultural hardship. Farmers who had fought in the war returned to find debts piling up and markets unstable. Falling crop prices left many unable to pay taxes or mortgages. Foreclosures spread across the countryside, fueling anger against elites and state governments. 5. Shays Rebellion. In 1786, Massachusetts farmers, led by Daniel Shays, rose up against taxes and debt collection. Courthouses were attacked. The state militia had to put down the revolt. To many leaders, the rebellion was proof that the Articles of Confederation were too weak to preserve order. The young nation's economic woes were not just numbers on paper, they were struggles lived in farms, towns, and markets across America. Beyond constitutional flaws and economic hardship lay the difficult world of politics, the art of building a functioning republic. 1. Divisions among leaders. The very men who had fought for independence soon disagreed about the nation's future. Federalists, like Hamilton and Madison, argued for a strong central government to stabilize the nation. Anti-Federalists feared tyranny and wanted to preserve state sovereignty. 2. Public distrust of authority. Having fought against monarchy, Americans were wary of concentrated power. Proposals for stronger government were often viewed as threats to liberty. Newspapers, pamphlets, and town meetings became arenas for fierce political debate. 3. Foreign relations. Britain, though defeated, still held forts in the Northwest Territory and supported native resistance to American expansion. Spain controlled the Mississippi River, blocking American farmers from vital trade routes. France, America's wartime ally, pressed for repayment of loans. The United States was independent, but far from secure. 4. The question of slavery. The Revolution proclaimed liberty, yet slavery remained deeply embedded. Northern states began gradual emancipation, but the South defended slavery as essential to its economy. This contradiction planted seeds of conflict that would grow in the decades to come. 5. The challenge of unity. 13 states, each with its own interests, had to learn the art of compromise. Political disputes over taxation, representation, and federal power revealed the difficulty of balancing unity with diversity. The crises of the 1780s reached a climax at the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. Delegates met not merely to reform the Articles of Confederation, but to design a new framework of government. 1. A stronger union. The Constitution created a federal system with separate branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. It gave Congress the power to tax, regulate commerce, and raise armies. It created a presidency, balancing authority with checks and balances. 2. Compromises. The Great Compromise balanced large and small states with a bicameral legislature. The 3/5 Compromise counted enslaved persons as partial representation, exposing the deep divide over slavery. 3. The Bill of Rights. To secure ratification, Federalists promised amendments guaranteeing individual liberties. Freedom of speech, press, religion, and due process became bedrock principles. The Constitution did not end America's problems, but it presented a path forward. It was the nation's response to the chaos of the post-war years. The years after the American War of Independence were not a golden age. They were years of trial. A fragile constitution, a ruined economy, and harsh politics nearly disrupted the promise of freedom. But through struggle came innovation. The failure of the Articles of Confederation gave birth to the Constitution. Economic hardship forced new financial systems. Political chaos fostered a culture of debate and negotiation.